People here? Oh, awesome.
You're back with Doc and Buddy in Reality's Edge. It's a no BS zone where we're just going to tell you what's going on to the best of our ability so we can all learn and grow, and most of all, have a good time.
And we're explorers, Doc, and you were exploring this week, getting some very interesting evidence. You put on one of the most amazing interviews I've ever seen you put on with Richard Doty, and wow. I mean, would you just tell us about how's the festival been so far, and maybe lead us into Doty? That would be amazing.
Well, it's over now. It was a great week. I presented on the first day, thanks to you, by the way. I presented Slide 9. I think anyone who's on this show knows Slide 9. This was the Chris Mellon leaked. We found out about how it leaked, by the way.
Wow.
It's there was a link on his blog, and some researcher in Europe, I think in the UK, happened to just start clicking around Chris Mellon's links on his blog, and he came across all the ET documents. It hadn't been encrypted with a password. When you have a WordPress blog, you can encrypt with a password. And it hadn't been encrypted, so he started downloading, snapping away screenshots, and we got Slide 9, and everyone loved it. We did an RV session, and we got some great results.
I thought I wanted done it.
I will show you really quickly. If you don't think RV works, let me just show you what we got in this 2 seconds. This was the target. Okay, it's just a typical target in my PowerPoint presentation. I guess I won't be using it again because now we can all say, no, this was the target. And a viewer, Sandra, who's been trained with Ed Dames, drew that.
Wow.
And that is pretty good, guys. Look at how close, even the things at the bottom of the screen are accurate. That's
amazing.
So we had a good start to the Sunday. You look at the little lines at the bottom. So I was blown away from the beginning, and everyone was good. But the week just got better and better. We had the Nimitz guys show up. They were, after a day or two, happy to do some interviews, which we got. I think it's one of the first videos we have of them talking about this on YouTube, as far as I know.
Yeah, I hadn't seen them before, so that was real new to me. That was great.
Yeah, they were a great bunch of guys, and we really appreciated them having the guts to come forward. I mean, think about it. They didn't sign NDAs, but still, they tell me that they know maybe a couple hundred people, either from the Princeton or the Nimitz, who are aware of this, but haven't wanted to come forward for a variety of reasons. And they want to be examples and come forward to encourage their shipmates to just tell us what happened. From everyone has a different angle on this incident, right, Bud? And so we got to learn more about the Tic Tacs, how incredibly fast they were. Kevin Day said they came down in 0.78 seconds from 28,000 feet to sea level. We are now told, and I guess it's public knowledge.
How many feet did he say? It was over 80,000. Basically came from space, but they tracked it from 80.
They
what I heard.
have their radar set up. Their radar is set to air a certain altitude where you encounter planes. So they didn't see them up there, but they were told by other people, this is why we want them to come forward, who were looking at a higher elevation in the atmosphere, that they started at maybe 120,000 feet. But Kevin didn't see that himself. He was tracking them at 28,000 feet for several days. He said the mood, you can all watch the video on my channel. He said the mood on the ship became kind of a sense of bewilderment and somberness, because no one knew what these days of these objects up there, and they thought it was a problem with the ship's electronics. They reboot the system.
And didn't we hear some stories too about what I had been talking about a few months ago about the geometric probes and some of the smaller geometric shapes? Was it someone on the Nimitz crew that spoke about the cubes?
Yes, we learned more about the cubes, but let me just finish about this. We now know that strike groups have subs associated with them, submarines. The Tic Tac that came down from 28,000 feet that engaged David Fravor was seen underwater.
Oh, I heard that it went underwater, but they couldn't see it. They could not detect it.
No. We're told the sonar guy said he got contact with it 200 feet under the water. Then it just popped back up, and it's doing these dances with Fravor. Fravor comes back. He says, let's put on the FLIR pod. They keep launching jets. It's an air exercise, after all. They keep launching them, and everyone was doing their own intercept, Kevin says right there. You know, there were the Tic Tacs. He said it was raining Tic Tacs. because as they would attempt to intercept them, they drop down to the water, mess around with planes, go back up, and there's 10 minutes of video from Underwood. I believe Chad Underwood is his name. He's public. And so Kevin, it was good. Now, learned a lot. Now the cubes. Okay, guess what we learned about the cubes? That is the Go Fast video.
Interesting.
That small object off the coast of Florida that you see, and even I was critical of it initially. I have to be honest. I put up some videos because I did interact with the folks at metabunk.org, and they convinced me with trigonometry that that thing couldn't have been going very fast. But we don't know the distance and how small. But if it is, really far away and going fast like that, it would be going fast. And it's a cube. This is what the cubes are. If you look at the Go Fast video, I am told by
like a beam to me. That's so neat.
Cubes. Now, someone suggested that they're scout ships scouting out stuff for the Tic Tacs. I don't know, but this is what the scuttlebutt is. That's the Navy term for rumors.
Well, when we talked about our fractal, they break down into certain categories, uses, and necessities, and seems kind of obvious. In that way,
I think so.
Could be wrong though. Who knows? It's really fascinating on so many different levels because this is a big case, but this has been happening again and again. While you were there, I interviewed a friend of mine who's a Vietnam veteran, sensei. He's a martial arts teacher. He's this amazing guy, and he spoke about seeing them on radar. They love combat. I mean, we're seeing this again and again and again. The numbers are colossal. The fact that the government keeps suppressing this when it's such important information, Doc, this is so important for us to know about because for so many reasons now.
Well, let me just share what their point of view is, the Nimitz guys, is it's one, an aircraft safety issue because these objects were ended up in the middle of, combat exercises. And if that happens, you could have accidents, injuries, so forth. Right in the middle of planes that are going as fast as they can to do dogfighting and all this, because it was a combat exercise, ADEX. But the second issue is that, you have this entire strike group. It's a lot of assets there. Now, let's say this sort of happens off the coast of, I don't know, Africa, a country we're not friends with, or in the Middle East. It could cause an international military incident.
It's been happening.
You guys are off that we haven't in 15 years found something about this, because if it keeps happening, and it's happening right now, it could cause something unwanted to happen.
I think you can always speculate the worst. You could also speculate the best. And, I think both sides are realistic notions. And I don't think it's unwise to prepare for the worst, but I don't think you need to be proactive on it. I think there's been a lot of cases of just in the past 5 to 10 years when we did the military exercises have been tracked by UFO episode. And it's time and time again, these big military exercises attract the attention. And we found out from that soldier the other day that combat attracts the attention. We know the nuclear launch facilities attract attention.
And we know from my videos that lowering your fractal dimension attracts them too.
Absolutely.
Well, that's my theory, at least. I mean, I'm kidding around, but it's.
No, but I think this fractal, our universe is so fractal, it's not illogical to assume that it could extend beyond that to the superstructure. I don't think that's a logical thought.
Little flying cubes could show up in your neighborhoods.
I thought that was more of a bean shape, and I heard very good from a very good source at the very end of it. You know how it turns sideways? It does like a pew that way. So it had 3 gravitational, beams, focusing the gravitons at one spot or whatever.
Well,
amazing time, Doc. Did you feel something different amongst the festival? Did it feel different than past ones, or?
We did. We've never had. I've heard other UFO researchers say, of course, well, we've had sightings for decades and decades, but we never have had all these people come forward from a military incident with all the sensor data, the radar data, the submarine data, the F-fighter plane data, the E2 Hawkeye data, and the Spy 1 radar from the Princeton. It's a phased array radar. It doesn't physically spin. It's phased, or it's electronically spinning, and it can detect things, at quite a long distance away. Buddy, these Tic Tacs were moving so fast, they were not detectable by the plane's radar. This is something beyond the capacity of our best fighter planes. The only thing that can pick it up is the best radar system in the world, the Aegis Spy 1 radar.
So they're going hypersonic, no doubt, at least speed.
28,000 miles an hour, I think someone calculated. 24,000? That's really fast. Right angle turn. Now, I have a video I haven't uploaded yet from these guys. It's with Gary Voorhees, who was on also at Tech on the Princeton. He was in charge of what's called CEC data. This is the collaborative engagement computer, something like that. Collaborative engagement. I forgot what the last C stood for, but what it is it gathers data from all the planes and all the ships in the strike group, and it finds fire control solutions so that if a plane loses its sensors or something, it can send fire control data to a plane that's on its own that doesn't have a lock. You kind of get the idea. It's a kind of a crowd information gathering system. It records radar, communication, sensor data. Now, this is what was taken off the ship within an hour of the Fravor incident.
Wow.
By plainclothes guys, which they all said was unusual. We also had P.J. Hughes say that his commander and 2 Air Force guys in jumpsuits came to his door within half an hour of him pulling the E-2 Hawkeye data bricks physically out of that plane when it landed on the Nimitz, putting them in the safe. That was his job, to safeguard the data. Pulls them out, puts them in a safe. You need 2 guys to unlock the safe. It's double cipher. And within half an hour of him putting the data in safe, they show up, they say, turn over the data, petty officer. Now, he told me when they come, your commander officer says, come knocks on the door, says, do this, you do it. And he turned over, they've never seen it again. We've never seen the data. Why? That's what everyone wants to know. Why is the data? The data has been confiscated at every single point source that we know about from this incident, I am told, from these guys. They said optical discs were erased. So that's the Nimitz case. That's where we are in it, and
it's very significant to me in so many different levels. There's so many different ways to, approach this. Just in terms of a advanced technology from a, advanced civilization standpoint, when you look at craft from the past, they are specifically keeping their technology just a couple notches ahead of ours. We've got some sophisticated technology now. I mean, yes, we don't have tractor beams and stuff an advanced civilization does, but we've got amazingly sophisticated stuff. We don't control the planet's environment, but we have very good surveillance of the planet. And the fact that they're able to come in with complete impunity, from what we can kind of tell right now, one Tic Tac could probably take out an entire fleet, because they're unstoppable, undetectable. They go through all different mediums without any hesitation. So the fact that they stay just ahead of us, their metamaterial now just works in the infrared. In the past, we don't even know if they were invisible in the infrared. We were just seeing solid ships or the cigars, or before that, the airships. So it seems very interesting that they're at this level of sophistication, which is very commensurate to still being about 75 years ahead of us. It's very interesting. Well, they follow this near future technology.
We have some questions here in the chat room about this, by the way.
Oh, good. Let's go.
I have another window open on the way it looks from YouTube. So Sleuth wants to know, does somehow observing them increase their numbers? It's a good question. I mean, I don't know. Buddy, what you said a few minutes ago is exactly what they told me. If these objects had been hostile, we stood no chance. Yeah. No chance. They're so fast. Our angle turns at absolutely can't be detected. We don't even know their cloaking capabilities. Go in the water. I mean, it's no contest. But they don't seem to be hostile. Kevin Day said over and over again, they just seem to wanted to be left alone, and we were intercepting them. And when the intercepts were over, they just went back up to 28,000 feet, and they're cruising along at 100 knots, really slow for that speed. It's hard to stay in the air at 100 knots at 28,000 feet.
I bet.
Anti-gravity and going down whatever they were doing. Well, what were they doing? I think I agree with Kevin. We need congressional hearings. What was this incident about, and why were they there for a week? If this was slight possibility that this is some advanced government technology to test against the strike group without telling them ahead of time. We need to know that too, if that was what it was.
You know, here's the problem that we run into, and there's a justification within the military, and even Doty said it himself. When they're working on advanced technology, the UFO cover serves a great way of distracting people from the real story. And we do have anti-gravity now. We do have other propulsion systems. Doty was talking about it, and I know for certain, for a fact, we've got several different types of anti-gravity that's achievable. And then we have apparently this recovered craft where we can't even recreate that technology. And it's time now. You know, the stealth bomber was our latest, most advanced, propulsion system and craft that came out, 40 years ago it was released. It's time our government comes out and says, we've got it. And I think that would help the environment so much, all these different factors, this cleaner energy. We were talking about that amazing group that you saw the live video of, and they had the cold fusion device that looked really, it seems to be working with
Andrea Rossi's group. Yep. ECAT.
So Doc, this has so many important levels. And I don't want to, like you were saying before, with any negativity, there's so much positive in this.
Everyone agrees. They all agree with you. This is a sort of a national priority at this point. Everyone there, including Richard Doty, we'll get to him in a second, agree with what you're saying here. I mean, it is time for us to take a step forward, or we're going to have a Sputnik moment, the way Chris Mellon said and Hal Puthoff said and Steve Justice, TTSA, like them or not, this is what they're saying is someone else is going to move ahead as a society to this level of technology, and we are going to find ourselves in the back seat.
And that's true not only with this advanced technology, but also with psi and stuff like that. We're not accepting the powers of consciousness.
All of it. It is way past midnight here to open up to the American public and find out, to the extent that we can know about this, what is going on. And Danny Sheehan, by the way, the attorney that worked for President Carter and got to go into the classified section of the Library of Congress, was there at the UFO Megacon, and he gave us a very good presentation, basically arguing the same thing that we're saying here in his own words. Now, he did see in the Library of Congress a craft with Air Force generals walking around, in the snow, and Doty will get to totally what this was. Actually, I didn't know what this was. He confirmed that it was a real craft. So Danny Sheehan gave us a lecture saying it's time to end this charade. It's not helping us anymore. It's not good for national security. It's only preserving the vested interests of those bureaucracies, and it is time for it to end. And let's move forward. We can do this. We can handle difficult subjects. We're good at this. It's not easy, but no one else does it better than we do without bloodshed, right? I mean, it goes in other countries, but we don't. We like to bring it forward, have an argument and a debate, and have a process. We're about process here in the United States. Where's the process in this? I do appreciate TTSA for what they've done, because they've enlivened the whole subject matter, even if I don't agree that it's necessarily a threat, which they've suggested. Yeah. But can we move forward with this topic? I mean, come on.
It's like getting to that next step of action. And I think now that I think it's happening. We're just, frustrated it's not happening fast enough. It is happening, and it's a blessing that
and everyone who's watching this is part of it. Let me just answer Sleuth's question one more. The tapes and the data bricks were confiscated while they were at sea. We're not talking about them getting back to port. They're 90 miles off the coast of San Diego to the southwest, and there are a number of military bases in the area. And what they pointed out to me is this incident was being monitored for several days before Fravor engaged the first Tic Tac. So people back on land knew about it. Since 9/11, the military is sharing information with, I guess, DHS. It's a law or something for security. So this information is all going back to shore. People know about it. It isn't surprising that they could come aboard in an hour. And this is what happened. So that is enough. So let's move on to Doty. How about that?
Oh, wow. There's so much in that Doty conversation. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but first I'm kind of disgusted by him, but at the same, he made his money in counter intel. We know there's counter intel against us now, and there'll be more in the future when UFO funding, comes into the Congress and into the other organizations more. So there'll be more counterintelligence in the future, but just to have him be, here making money off us now, I don't know. I just felt, he was great. He was honest. He's one of us in many ways. I understand all that stuff. He's a human being. He had a job, but he kept saying on your interview, I had a job. I had to do it. it's about doing the right thing too. It doesn't matter what the job is. You know what I mean? I know you're the same way.
I haven't seen Mirage Man, but I did see him obviously in Unacknowledged. And he did seem to be being level with Steven. I know he did a much more extensive interview that we haven't seen. Do you know that he told me that the reason that you don't see the full 3.5 hours of the interview with Steven, there's a reason why we only see, I think, 90 minutes if you buy the iTunes HD version, get the extras. He said, I guess I can just say this, it's on the record now, at least with me, is that Steven was told not to show it. Steven Greer was told not to show it.
Yeah.
It's a serious situation from Doty's point of view. I can't verify all the things he said. And for those who are, just picking up, I got to interview him. He was walking around, and I knew him from Unacknowledged. And Linda Moulton Howe has mentioned him from time to time, and I just said, why not ask for an interview? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? And he came to that conference wanting to set the record straight about who he is, why he did what he did, and why he's a believer in the subject. He told us there are 5 big cases that he knows about that have never been shared with the public. We don't really know what's going on if what he's saying is true. It's actually a much bigger subject. He described the abduction phenomena to me in the interview. I have to say I was rather surprised. I thought it was going to be an interview about him debunking the subject and paying journalists, which he admitted to, monkeying around with the news, having what he called snitches. I'm just going to use his own words. In every major news organization.
He said everyone, and in one city too. It's unbelievable. He said 9 species. He also admitted something that I've been saying for a while since I put out the Cash Landrum video. Many people have been, pushing this as well too. That Cash Landrum was a one of our crappy nuclear propulsion systems. He said it was an ET craft. I don't believe it was an ET craft. I think it was our craft with a nuclear propulsion system in it. And wow, Doc, this is.
You've been saying this for a while now. Let me ask you, did somebody tell you this, or did you figure this out from your own research? How did you seem to be vindicated in your interpretation of that event?
A lot of these, and with the Nimitz stuff, it seems like all the stuff keeps coming down. A lot of that stuff, there's different things involved here, but with Cash Landrum was just basic logic. I knew that advanced civilization would not be. It's the lowest form of power system, would not be spewing radiation out there. And I knew if we tried to do a nuclear propulsion engine, that was right during that time period where we're using nuclear propulsion on subs, aircraft carriers, we had the bombs, everything. Why not have it on a plane? Paul Murad was in charge of the NERVA project, which was nuclear rocket engines. I bet Paul Murad, who I interviewed, had something to do with it. I just felt that in my gut. But I knew that once what happened, when I saw the report in the case, I knew it was poor shielding of a reactor. Because in order to make something lift, you have to have, how shielding is for the lead has to be so heavy.
I just want to point out that, thanks, buddy, we have Patrick Hughes right now, PJ, one of the Nimitz witnesses in the chat room right now. So for those of you who are there, you have a very rare opportunity to ask a Nimitz witness who I interviewed. You can see his interview right on my YouTube channel. Very credible. Yeah, and I just want to fellow. Right now, he's in the chat room. You can ask away, and he's the guy. I mean, I'm repeating what they told me. I wasn't there, but this. So please do it anyway, buddy. This is.
I just want to say really quickly to PJ. I just want to salute him and thank you for your service to our country. God bless you for that. But beyond that, coming out, putting your reputation, your family, everything on the line for all of us. I know it's not just for you. You're not in this for money, PJ. You're doing this because it's so important, and you know that in your heart and soul. This is information we all need. This is a humanity issue. And thank you. God bless you, PJ. Keep the fight up.
And those guys did a great job. Just a great job. We've never had anything like that at any of these. I just want to say, I've been going to these conferences for about 20 years, ever since around, I think that first one's longer. I think 97 was my first conference. And we've never had anything like the caliber of those, Navy vets coming forward and telling us. And it's such a brave thing to do, because I can't tell you how often I come across witnesses, and I can't tell the rest of you because they're afraid of losing benefits and afraid of them. I mean, they're still afraid of talking, and I often want to share stories with all of you, and I can't. But these four guys, and maybe some women will come forward too in the future, but at the moment, these guys really impressed me with their sheer fortitude and lack of fear to come forward for the cause of helping other vets not to feel afraid of talking about this event, so we can find out what it is. So thanks again, PJ. So
my dad was in the Navy too, and he saw UFO. He was a commander of World War II, and he had seen the UFO, and he had told me about it. Yeah, it's interesting. And he was hypnotized by it, and he saw it again another day.
So, going back to Richard Doty, I will personally say that I was impressed with his apparent honesty and integrity. Maybe some of you don't agree with me. I know he's been portrayed as a bad guy in this field, but I didn't find that to be the case in my interview with him. I found him to be very candid at sharing his version of the truth, and I did get to talk to him after the interview to learn more details about some of the things that he mentioned. And I found him to be very credible and to basically say that the government is extremely concerned about this topic, and they're not sharing it with the public from his point of view because they are not sure really what we're actually dealing with.
Doc, you really nailed it in the head, and this should be the government's biggest concern, is this national security issue. When China and Russia have Psi Institutes, 6 buildings dedicated just to science, parapsychology across the country, the society generally accepts it, and the government talks about UFOs more than we do. China, the same thing, their institutionalized study of it. Peru, the entire country, they've got an open overt program. These other countries are now more overt, and what that does, and you know this, you've spoken about this before, bringing the subject out stimulates the youth and these young minds in 10, 15 years, the ones that we need to be doing the engineers and breaking through in a lot of the different details to make this technology even better. So we don't have, Cash Landrum type engines. Those are the first models, that come out. So, there's so much about this, and I'm glad that we're doing what we're doing, and PJ and those guys, it's about, at this point, it's an education process.
It's an education process. And again, national security. Eisenhower was the one that passed this national, I believe it was something called like National Defense Transportation Act to create the interstate highway system, National Defense Education Act to create an educated populace. And there were several more national defense initiatives, because national defense is not just secrecy and weapons and, being stronger than the other guys. It's about internal strength within the countries. This is why bringing this topic out, talking about it, buddy, at just one level, and I guess everyone watching knows, it reduces fear. We don't want to just blindly react in fear the next time a big Phoenix Lights incident occurs. And I feel like this sort of topic, talking about it publicly, is like an inoculation against fear, because based on the UFO Megacon, the Nimitz, and Doty's interview with me and many other presenters there, you just feel like, okay, I know a little more about it. It's not such an unknown, and you're not going to react with a knee-jerk fear reaction like, oh, they're just coming to get us. Even Richard Doty told me, when I asked him on the interview, he said abductions are rare. They are not happening all over the place. The thing about him is, he says in the interview, the government can't do anything about it. These things, craft come in, they take people. I think he kind of hinted that the government does want to know what's happening to the abductees, which might support the Mill Lab idea, which honestly, before, I have to admit, I wasn't sure what that was, if it was a real event. But he seemed to suggest they do want to know where people are being taken, what's being done to them. And now here's the big thing, buddy. He suggested that some of them are hostile. You heard him say that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't preclude the possibility that can be interpreted like that. I know of a lot of hostile events that I've heard of some. I've done extensive research on this, and I know 3 events that are the most highly credible events that have some hostile activity in it. But I thought it was also interesting, just to rewind a second, that he said there was a unit. I thought he said something like there was a unit just for abductions, or a group just for abductions, which I thought was interesting. Maybe I misinterpreted that.
No, you didn't misinterpret that. And
that was very interesting
to me after the interview. And I'm only sharing things that I think he would obviously feel okay with me sharing with you, because he had prepared a much longer lecture. He worked at Area 51, and he had another hour to present to us about his work at Area 51. He told us, I'm not sharing any secret here, we went up to him, Area S2, the administrative unit for the underground S4.
He admitted it. Yeah, it's amazing.
He admitted it, and he wanted to present it, but they ran out of time. Now, if I was the conference organizer, I would say, Richard, we're giving you another hour. We'll make dinner now, but they're bringing him back next year.
He was huge info. Huge info.
It's just a very, well, I lost my train of thought here, but, you know, okay, the DIA projects. I asked him about ATIP. He told me that's less than 1% of all the funding that goes to ET UFO projects. Of
course. That was the smallest, crappiest one. They were upset that they couldn't get into the big ones. NASIC has one. You know, the Air Force has had one for over 30 years. The Navy has one. Most people don't know about NASIC. They have a massive, massive one. Even the Department of Energy, you know, we hypothesize there should be if the government's at least competent, because this subject reaches into a lot of areas. It reaches into propulsion. It reaches into energy. It reaches into all these different, you know, important areas. You know, space. It reaches to Navy. You know, so you know, if we were to competently address this, you would expect it to be, you know, broad and research. But the fact that there's now, it's ridiculous. They're hiding it is ridiculous. Because it's not about, you know, shielding any secret black projects. We know there's, you know, all these other secret black projects. It needs to come out now. Like you say, it makes us weaker in terms of national defense. We're not getting that surge of, you know, youth who's going to be creating or all this, you know.
Well, you know, here's what I think, buddy. This is my litmus test for sharing information online, the interviews I do, and so forth. I imagine there's someone like me out there right now who's 5 years old. And they're looking around wondering what the world is about. They see shows on TV like I did when I grew up around Star Trek. And they're forming images in their mind of reality and people and the universe.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, I was inspired with a sense of wonder by shows like Star Trek and reading books by John Keel, The Mothman Prophecies, you know, as a kid. And I imagine there's someone like me out there right now. And when I present this information, I'm talking to that 5-year-old kid out there. And he's going to come across this information and say, it's going to validate for him that some of these things are real, and he might start imagining and dreaming, and he knows he may become an engineer or a researcher or contribute. And to me, that's progress. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. It's not more complicated than that.
And I believe the same is true as of the psi abilities and the powers of consciousness, and that these kids should be educated. For we teach them physical education, we don't teach them their own consciousness. I remember struggling and seeing my friends struggling with just existence. You know, and consciousness, for a child to understand their own consciousness will give them great confidence. And if you can create those environments, I mean, I just think that's such an important thing. And I think as physics develops further, we're going to see how powerful conscious is in terms of interacting with the real world. We know it as, you know, viewers and stuff who we work in this realm. You know, we dip to the lineman, into the substructure, but the average person doesn't. And if we have this ability, and even if you don't, even if people out there don't believe in any of that stuff, wouldn't it seem logical for a child to be in touch with their own psychology better and to care about others around them more? I think, you know.
And buddy, this is something you've mentioned a lot. It has to do with empathy.
Yeah.
It's how we treat each other. It's a very deep thing having to do with the way we're brought up, how we treat other people, and how we evaluate our actions, how they're going to affect other people. And what could be stronger than realizing that your actions here don't just affect other people on Earth, but they somehow have an impact in the solar system, in the galaxy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, everything. We're connected with everything.
That's a big step to go from my actions just affect my local people I know, my village or my country or my planet, to thinking what we're doing here could be observed by other beings. And they may be making judgments about us or decisions based on the actions that they see that we don't realize they're monitoring. I think it's something to think about.
Absolutely. You know, I think it just seems obvious that teaching kids empathy and consciousness classes and all that stuff are so important to our development into the future. You know, if we had more empathy about our environment wouldn't be as bad. If we had more empathy about the carbon, you know, emissions. And I think it's kind of a neat place to get kind of back around to. And I think it's you know, empathy is so important across the board. You know, Richard Doty wouldn't be involved if he wouldn't be at the festivals if he didn't have some sort of empathy. He's involved with the subject. He's connected to it. He enjoys the mystery. He's kind of like one of us in a weird way. These soldiers who are reporting themselves, you know, us as remote viewers, And, I guess we just need to support and focus on the positives. But this past week has been so intense with all the different information and everything. And it makes you frustrated. Someone who's like us, and I'm sure listeners are frustrated too. We want more info. We want more,
Let me add one more thing about Richard Doty. He's told me after the interview that you see that he has a book that he wants to publish. He had to send it into the government for review, and they redacted hundreds of pages. They even redacted punctuation marks. He complained to them, and they sent him back a version of the book where only punctuation had been redacted, and it's going to take him a long time. I said, well, was it reasonable redaction? He said, possibly, but I think he feels a little frustrated at the lack of progress because, he said his security clearance, expired, I believe, 25 years ago, if I'm getting correctly. The security clearance around the topics that he's telling us about expired quite a while ago. So I think even he felt that there's not enough. He wouldn't be talking to Stephen Greer and to people like me and showing up at these conferences if he didn't think it was time to move the ball down the field. Now, I asked him, Richard, why do you show up at these conferences? Right. You were debunking people like this. He goes, because this is how we learn about what's going on. We get new information from presenters. So,
that's why you're not going to shut off our channels, Doc, because we're sharing and we're learning and giving them information, making it easier for them. If they watched our videos months ago, they would have found out about the deeper information about this or that, the other. But I just think we're so blessed, Doc, to be in these front row seats.
One more thing, one more thing he said to me before he presented at the conference was he's been working with Hal Puthoff for over 10 years.
Wow, what was he doing?
Now, I know he did because someone said, how do you know he did that? And people went through some of the interview and said, well, here he said he was from 78 to 80 and 10 years. Well, he came up to me afterwards and told me that he had done the RV session.
Oh.
And he said, I said, Richard, where did you learn remote viewing? I hadn't heard him mentioned he said, I worked with Hal. And he didn't skip a beat. He didn't have to think about this. He was there. There's no way it was real. He worked with Hal. Hal taught him remote viewing, and he's probably a good viewer. As anyone who worked with Hal would end up being a good viewer,
So wow, he must be a great viewer then if he's working with Hal. That's amazing. Doc, I have that feeling.
He said the same things that Hal did. In the interview, you can see him asking him about the materials, and other scientists I've talked to about the metamaterials, the way the shell of these craft interact with space-time metric engineering, the quantum vacuum. And he used the exact words that Hal used to describe what their current idea about it is, how they work, these craft.
Engineering and quantum metric, yeah.
That's more evidence to me, obviously, that he had to work with Hal. Why would he be saying the same things? Unless you think this is all some sort of giant conspiracy. I know there are people out there, maybe people listening, who think he lied to us in the past and we can never trust him again. But there is no way he could just say the same things that Hal would say about it if he hadn't worked with Hal about things that Hal told us at SSE, space-time metric engineering. Again, going back to you, buddy, slide 9, integration of solid surfaces, descents or disassembly, alteration of the space-time construct. This is all coming from the same place.
Affecting the decision-making of
Davis model. You get the whole thing.
Yeah, and Doc, my gut instinct on this whole thing right now, I think everything's kind of vibrating. The whole subject is vibrating, and I think we're going to have big stuff in the next year. I mean, bigger than
it's moving in the right direction. People can take some, comfort here that we're getting some movement here, and it's coming from the ground up.
But I think
get involved who want to tell their stories and share with the rest of us what they've seen and what they don't.
And when social consciousness gets to a certain point, things happen. The 100th monkey effect, And I think right now what's happening is going to produce an effect that's not expected. And that this greater consciousness we may have a big sighting. We may have something that becomes like I think we're going to have something really special within the next year. And maybe that's the best way, but rather than landing on the White House or, it's just an exciting time to be alive with all this life forms, and people like us care. We want to do it right. We only get one shot at a first meeting of a species. We only, all these different things. People like us who care. We're empathetic. We can help it. We care.
Okay, so let's be honest about our relationship with the ETs. even things that start off hostile could evolve into something better, even if there are groups right now that he alluded to, which he was sort of general about it. But he wasn't general with it.
But he seemed to say there's several races that were very hostile. And
and this is what motivated Reagan to create SDI, which was to prevent some of these incidents from ever happening again. But even things that seem hostile now doesn't mean that they necessarily have to be that way in the future. So what we're talking about is developing long-term relationships with other intelligent species.
Sure. You know, I'm certain.
And this is important. This has to be done carefully. It has to be something that comes out of a national discussion of how we want to proceed. We can't just let some.
We can't race the judgment.
Groups create this agenda. I mean, after all, foreign policy is officially the task of the Senate to develop foreign policy with the president's approval, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is supposed to be part of our democratic process. It isn't supposed to be done by small groups who just decide on their own what we're going to do. This is something that's done. There's a process in place according to the Constitution about how foreign policy is developed. I mean, I think it just is that simple.
I think so. You know, I think that people have very little in the governments and everything, have less to do individually or even in smaller organizations with disclosure happening than the others have to do with disclosure. I kind of look at this very much like a zoo scenario. You know, a lot of people who have the negative abduction scenarios could be like the sick lion, where they take the sick lion and the lion thinks, oh, this is a hostile event. This is hostile. You know, that the zookeeper took me and they're hostile. Let's go back to the other lions, and I'm going to come back to the other lions and talk about what we should do. When should we disclose the fact that there are humans out there? You know, well, the lions don't choose. It's the humans who choose whether they disclose, instead of wearing their lion's clothing with the babies. You know how they oftentimes redress as the animal to feed the baby animal. And in so many ways, the zoo hypothesis kind of works. It works in this scenario that, you know, in many ways,
but it's true. You're suggesting a higher level of maturity here.
Sure, absolutely.
Honestly, the way we've dealt with this subject so far has been rather childish nationally. I'm not talking about any specific person here, but this is not very intelligent what we do with this. You don't just hide secrets. It doesn't help in the long run.
And you don't throw out fearful conjectures like Tom at To the Stars. When they say that they're all evil and that they're deadly, just look at the case history. Just look at statistics. We did episodes on this. We know 85% are peaceful. Even people walk away with healings and magic abilities. You know.
Again, Richard told me that they're, for the most part, neutral observers of our species. They come here for scientific research, and they said the grays are completely neutral, basically, or non-harmful. That's his. I mean,
he called them something interesting. Did you notice them? I think he called them the name that Linda Moulton Howe called them.
He called them Ebens.
Ebens, yeah.
Now, he did say that there were wrecks, Roswell, Kingman, and another second Roswell crash in that area, and other crashes he alluded to. There were survivors, he said, and
Del Rio, which we know was a real.
I guess the next step is to see some documentation. We'd all like to see where's the the documents, buddy? Where is the documents?
Well, we could be doing some
documents.
We could brainstorm some FOIAs on this, but wow, what an amazing event! And
anyway, it was amazing, and I'm still just sort of thinking about everything he said. And is it all true? I don't know. I mean, but he seemed awfully credible to me, and obviously Stephen Greer found him very credible. And I think I talked to people. He made a very positive impact on the audience there. I don't think anyone felt he wasn't, that I talked to, that he. I mean, almost everyone I think thought he was very sincere. I mean, obviously the things he did in OSI a long time ago at this point. I mean, they were talking decades ago, and. I mean, we just sort of have to take him at his word at this point. Now, if you watch the interview and you don't, there are people on the channel say, you think he's telling the truth. I don't know. I can't prove it. All I know is that's the interview. You have to do your own research. I can't prove it one way or another, but I was happy that he was candid. He shared a lot of facts with us. I mean, we all know that Reagan made that speech at the UN, right? So that's on the record, and this seems reasonable. There was some event that got him involved, right?
Yeah, he made that speech 3 times.
Three times?
Yeah, Reagan did. He made it 3 times. Well, this kind of this makes me want to double up my efforts. Every episode we have an episode, we talk and we get into this stuff. It really makes me, when I hear about 4 members of the Nimitz crew out, and that the reception this year, the energies pick up the vibration, and I think it's Doc, we have to pick up our education process and get more information out there as much as we can.
I really want to give a shout out to Dave Beatty, because his animated video, if you haven't seen it, folks, the Nimitz Experience.
Stunning.
I will say that tomorrow there's going to be a new version uploaded to YouTube.
Really?
We saw it at the conference. It has new material.
Wow.
And it has the scenes of men coming aboard and confiscating data. And I was told by the Nimitz guys there that they were filmed by Dave during the conference to even create a more extended version of the Nimitz Experience. So if you haven't seen the animation, the Nimitz Experience, you have to go watch that as soon as we're done with this, because it is so well done. It is just top notch, and it portrays the weirdness of it and the strangeness of these very strong, technologically competent naval fleet encountering something that they don't know what to do with and they can't even keep up with. Think of the feeling of that. I mean, it's Chris Mellon presented it at the TTSA event, but when you hear from the guys who were there, it just gives it. And so Dave Beatty was the one that kind of got a lot of this going, because once that was on YouTube, people who've been there, I think Patrick was one of them, contacted Dave, said, hey, I want to tell you my version of it. So we're getting more pieces of the puzzle.
And it was amazing. He was so high fidelity from the very beginning. Very few people knew about the little L's on the bottom of the Tic Tac. He had them at the very beginning when that first came out. Not many people spoke about it. It's so great to see a lot of new faces, new things, and new abilities and processes and angles at this. I don't think they can hold up the secrecy infrastructure too much longer. I think the other side is going to push it further. They're getting fleets now showing up at every naval exercise. I think the amount of sightings and visitations is resonating at such a high frequency. They're having this, instead of just a few coming in, we're having tumbling fleets. There's a very active involvement and engagement with the military the past, seems like always, but especially the past 10, 15, 20 years. I think we're coming up to a very interesting time.
It's very exciting, and we'll see what happens next. Now, just before we go, let's answer one more question from Sleuth. She wanted to know, and she asked me this, and I didn't have the answer, so thanks for asking it again here in the chat room. Did he mention Project Serpo or the Zeta Reticulans? And no, he didn't mention that.
He did mention Zeta Reticuli, though, didn't he? I thought he said the Greys came from there or something.
He did. I mean, guys, again, I'm the interviewer. I can't verify it. My attitude in these interviews is don't put words in the interviewee's mouth. Don't have an agenda. Just let them tell their story, and we can all later on look at it again and wonder, hey, was it Zeta Reticuli or was it raised from a parallel Earth, as Courtney Brown believed from our remote viewing session? I don't know, but there's different versions of this. But yeah, he did say Zeta Reticuli, but no, so he didn't mention Serpo. And one of the things when you're interviewing someone for the first time is you don't want to overload them so much that they want to shut up. You want them to tell their story from their, you know what I'm saying? It's not your job to keep inserting your agenda. Let them tell their story and let it evolve naturally without you pushing it.
You had the nice line. You didn't softball it with them, though. You asked them a little bit of tougher questions, and you were asking some probing questions and some questions that made him maybe think about his security, clearances or different stuff. I mean, it was great. And I'm going to be there in Vegas in 2 more weeks doing a little work with a doctor and some telekinesis stuff, little research.
Okay. So listen, guys, thanks. I think it's a good time to had a lot here. I'm losing my energy here after a week. We're going to call it quits for the moment, and we will see you on Reality's Edge, folks. Okay, take care for now. Thanks for watching.
Empathy. Much love.